Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Not paranormal, but who wants to hear about this old man I met on Facebook who tried roping me into a cult built solely so he could live out his dream of becoming Batman? Sorry for the delay in providing this story. I went to sleep. Also, I gotta say, this happened a few years ago now in a time of my life that I have sketchy memories of at best. So this will be less of a story and more of a disjointed summary of what I recall. Be me, late 2018, just turned 17 if I recall correctly. Just finished final year of high school, which was stressful enough. But on top of that, had to deal with ex going berserk and abusive. A former friend trying to mass-scale ruin my reputation so he could sleep with my ex. And my dad trying to take advantage of the situation in order to further manipulate me. So it was a really infuriating time. I was really anxious and depressed. And as soon as school was out, I would sleep as much of the day away as I could. And all remaining time was spent eating pizza and browsing Facebook like a typical normie. Hence why my memories are hazy and indistinct. But that's also how I met this bizarre guy, added a lot of strangers on Facebook. If any of you know the dreaded meme community, then you know what it's like. I would like to say the old fart's full Facebook name so you guys can go check him out and see that I'm not screwing with you. He really is some deranged old timer. But I think that's probably against the rules on doxing or something. But then again, I do know his name was obviously fake. So let me know if it's not against the rules, bros, and I'll happily oblige. If I'm not mistaken, our first interaction came about because I was sad posting about my ex and all that nonsense again, and he was offering help. So since I was still naive enough to try seeing replacement father figures in people, I accepted his offers to talk about it. For a few weeks we'd have on and off conversations, but as time went on it seemed like he was engaging less and less with the heavier topics, and trying to force the conversation to his own whims. The old fart seems less interested in actually giving advice now, and more interested in trying to build me up as some heroic figure, and fixates upon childhood bullying, which wasn't something I ever brought up as it had very little impact on me. But man, was he obsessed with the topic. Completely unprompted starts word vomiting at me about how when he was a kid he dressed and acted real edgy. And if I recall correctly, he either had no parents or refused to acknowledge them, earning him the nickname of Batman from the kids at school, who supposedly were relentless in calling him that. He starts pressing me about if I had any similar experiences where I was called some nickname like that, and struggling to think of anything that wasn't some poor pun on my real name that I wasn't happy to share with him. Plus also those puns were pretty funny, like replacing the Vitch in my surname with Witch. I mentioned the time that everyone gave me shit for being the only kid who liked Doctor Who and called me the Doctor to make fun of me. Note that the main guy who did this is now one of my best friends, so obviously I bear no animosity over such a dumb insult. I was just pressed to think of something not too personal. The old man springs into action and says something like, "Then henceforth you shall be codenamed the Doctor," and adds me to some group chat and sets my nickname to the Doctor. Of course, his nickname in the group chat is Batman, though I think he changed it to the author or the narrator later on. Whatever, doesn't really matter. Starts introducing me to his friends, who are mostly a ragtag bunch of kids my age, who I presume he pulled the father figure shtick on too. Almost all the actual adults are in real life friends of his, like his ex-wife, codenamed the Sorceress, and his brother, whose codename I cannot remember. Significantly weirded out, but trying my best to be friendly. Old guy introduces me to some guy a few years older than me who he refers to as Shaggy. Apparently his main intention with adding me to the group chat was to introduce me to this Shaggy guy, claiming I reminded him of him. Yeah, right, Elmao. I suppose I should say more about Shaggy, though, since he becomes rather important as the story progresses. Dude's a little older than I am, a hobby blacksmith, sees Kurt Cobain as a personal hero, was originally one of old Batboy's most zealous and close subordinates, and most importantly, actually met and lived with the guy. My guess is that the nickname of Shaggy was similarly forced on him due to his appearance, like how the Doctor was forced on me due to the story I told, judging by his private testimony to me on the matter. But anyway, apparently the old man had pulled strings to get Shaggy some accommodation at a church, and cheap transit over to his to live with him. Cue the old man sending me videos of him reenacting scenes from The Crow while Shaggy sits in the back, clearly zonked out of his mind. Wish I saved that video, it was hilarious. Time goes on. The old-timer starts saying classic radicalization stuff in the group chat. Refers to us as outcasts, rebels, renegades, and so on and so forth. While yes, I am a dashing rogue, I am not quite naive enough to fall for such flattery. But points for honesty, I guess. To date, this was probably the most transparent attempt at manipulation I've ever been subjected to. I remember I said something dumb in the group chat like, "Hey, who says I'm an outcast?" which prompted the old man to kind of shit his pants, DMing me to explain that I'd supposedly misinterpreted him or whatever. Kind of hand-wave him saying like, "Sorry, bro, I'm really not interested in joining any cults." He goes on about how it's not a cult, it's actually a philanthropic organization. Gives some long-winded monologue about justice and heroism and his plans. Calls his organization the Crusaders for the Light, or something along those lines. Explains that he plans on founding a comic book company that will take over the industry, from which he will funnel funding to the organization to enable their vigilante activity. Again decline, saying that if I'm going to be doing anything heroic, I'll be doing it on my own terms, not because it's my job. But still offered to help as just a friend, because at this point I didn't really know how or when to cut people off, and also because I wanted to see how this would pan out, and have the opportunity to disrupt it if it got any further out of hand than an old man grooming easily suggestible teens into becoming vigilantes for him. Anyway, time goes on and my interactions with the old guy diminish a bit, and the group chat winds down and becomes inactive. I still talk to Shaggy fairly often. Suddenly one night, the old guy woke me up at like 3 a.m., sending me some nonsense about "speak these words from the bottom of your heart and become my crusader," along with a list of vows for me to take. Screw that noise. The only crusaders I care about joining are the Stardust Crusaders. Ignore him, go back to bed, completely avoid responding to it in the morning, and wind down all communication with him since he won't take my no as an answer. Hear from Shaggy about what living with the old man is like. Home Slice ended up running away from Batman's house because one time the old man got drunk and went at his brother with a knife, screaming and rambling about justice or something because my mate got involved and restrained the old guy rather than allowing him to murder his brother in a drunken rage. He was excommunicated from the Crusaders. Also, Batman lived with his mother and siblings still despite being at least in his 40s, most likely 50s, and they stole most of my mate's stuff. So much for it being a charity job bringing him in, huh? Naturally, Shaggy got mad. Shaggy wants revenge and his stuff back, so he asks me to keep an eye on the group chat for him to see what the old man's been saying about him. Pass on the news that the old guy has labeled him a traitor to the organization and a traitor to justice. We laugh and have a light bulb moment, deciding to convince the old man that all of his delusions are true, and that Shaggy and I were government operatives attempting to destabilize him before he got too powerful. Unfortunately, I haven't acted on this yet, because the old fart's attempt at telling people they're forbidden from talking to Shaggy obviously didn't go down well, and the group chat and all that kind of dissolved. The old man also wound up blocking me because, due to my inactivity, I had no longer been interacting with the poetry and other nonsense he'd been sending me, such as pointed questions about if I'd been talking to Shaggy, who, if I recall correctly, got given a different code name after he got kicked out. I think it was the Jackal or something. The old tard's last message to me was something along the lines of, "Please respond to me, Sir Doctor, just once for old time's sake." I still have some friends from the cult, though, so perhaps I could ask them for some help. Doubt they'd want anything to do with it, though. Unfortunately, the story kinda ends there. We don't really know what ended up happening past that point, other than things kinda went to hell, and the old man got hyper-paranoid and locked whatever remained way down to top-secret status. As an experience, it's really weird and interesting, though, because of how much of a batshit plan it was for something simultaneously so mundane. It wasn't anything satanic or anything occult. It was just an old man fostering a cult of little radical vigilantes in order to prop up his delusions of becoming Batman. All in all, a rather bizarre but also forgettable experience. I'll continue one final time to cover other random weird things the old man said and did. Since these didn't really fit nicely into the character limits of the others, nor the flow of the story, Here. First of all, the old-timer goes by Brucius Lee Wainwright on Facebook, which is evidently an attempt to emulate a certain Bruce Wayne. Though I learned from Shaggy, whose real name I won't be divulging, that the old man's real first name is Daniel. That's all I can say without risking doxing him, but he doesn't do a good job hiding the rest, so me keeping my mouth shut doesn't matter much. Considering his obsession with his own childhood, and the way he targeted teenagers specifically who he felt were outcast or emotionally distraught enough to be easily suggestible, Shaggy and I are both extremely suspicious of what he may be up to now that those of us who would have rocked the boat about any wrongdoing are out of the picture, especially considering his closeness to a 13-year-old teenage codenamed Tails, after Miles Tails Prower from Sonic. He unironically posts those boomer-ass skeleton memes and is obsessed with fantasy metal. He also posts a lot of photos of himself shirtless and wearing makeup, comparing himself to Batman or to Solid Snake of all people. He once posted pictures of Shaggy shirtless too, without asking him. In fact, he would publicly post photos and information about any of his Crusaders, who he could get photos and information on. Luckily, I was not one of them. He keeps posting fake deep poetry and signing off with "Let there be light, the author." So it's possible he's also developed a god complex. Finally, when I was talking to him about something my ex did, asking for advice, he simply responded, "Ah yes, a classic conundrum that villains throw at young heroes." Literally all she did was ask if hypothetically I would kill her in order to save the world, as a sort of late-night nonsense question. Dude thinks he's all-knowing, but all his life experience comes from reading comics. It's sad.
Facebook community groups, adding tons of random people who you don't know, 50-year-old creeps interacting with teens and developing uncomfortably close relationships with them, group admins power-tripping with weird god complex hierarchies. Holy shit, Anon, I know exactly the sort of groups you're talking about. I used to circle the exact same sort of groups back in like 2011 or 2012 when I was 14, and those groups blew up for the first time, although admittedly it never got anywhere near as bad as what you're describing. But I do remember having a friends list of like over 1,500 people I didn't know, girls having massive groups of thirsty orbiters, older men constantly flirting with underage girls, nudes being leaked every other day, mass bullying, and a million different group chats. People getting into Facebook relationships with different people every day and having mad drama all the time. Basically just a degenerate septic tank of misguided younger people, narcissists, and thirsty groomers. Glad I basically nuked that account around 2017 and never looked back.
You made a good choice, Anon. I took too long and only noped out last year. I made good friends, but Facebook as a whole is just not worth using, especially when shit like what I described is so commonplace.
Brucius Lee Wainwright.
Hey shit, that's him. Did you find that on his Facebook or something?
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.